Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Dave here with Go Gamers, and today we got a brand new video with a PS4 Slim that's not wanting to connect to controllers, and that also includes in safe mode as well. I narrowed it down to the Southbridge, which is what typically happens if you can't connect a controller and the actual OS are in safe mode as well. So I'm going to show you guys how to be able to get that done. Now in this video, I ended up having to take another Southbridge, reballing it and putting it on this PS4 Slim. We start off with trying a simple reflow, which the reflow did not work. Also to note, day one of this video, for whatever reason, my internet didn't work, but I ended up eventually getting that repaired anyways. All right, guys, so let's get straight into the video, and I'm going to show you guys how we got this issue repaired. All right, guys, so today is actually the next day. I actually went out yesterday and I just wired up the internet myself outside the house. So that was a fun experience. So I had to go get all the wiring, get all that stuff done, and ended up just hooking it all up. So that they were talking about they was going to take a week to hook up the internet. I can't wait that long. So we got the internet up. Everything is good now. But what we're going to do with this one is we're going to focus on this right here. Obviously, this is what's known as our Southbridge. And we could be able to flip this over and we could be able to test to see if there are any shorts on the Southbridge. All right, so I can put my black probe on ground. Just quickly, well, let me turn it on first, actually. And got my multimeter turned on. And let's put black probe on ground. Test some of these caps. So it's a little bit different orientation than I'm used to. But that main cap. So yeah, there's no noticeable shorts that I can see on the multimeter, but this is what we're going to be focused on. I removed the CMOS battery already. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Kapton tape around this general area just to make sure we protect this. Also, then remove this thermal padding, and first things first, we're gonna wrap this around with Kapton tape to make sure we protect it. And I'm going to throw this on my reball machine. Now, if this reflow does not work, I'm going to just speed boost past this entire process because it would be a waste of time for you guys to see that. But if it does require us to be able to replace the Southbridge, I'm just going to speed boost past the reflow process, and then we'll go straight into reballing. So let's see what we can be able to get done with this. All right, so we got it partially put back together, and I'm not going to go over to the TV screen just yet because I don't feel like changing the input and everything until we figure out if this works or not. All right, so we're at the screen where it says connect the DualShock 4 controller. You can see I'm pressing the PS button. So, I mean, the reflow literally only fixed it to where it would just show up orange, and that's it. So I'm pressing it, and we're not getting anything that's fixing it. So now we're just going to go ahead and replace that Southbridge. So now we know the reflow did not work. Now let's get that Southbridge replaced. All right, so now I am going to commence the process of lifting the Southbridge off of a donor motherboard. I did test the components around it to make sure the Southbridge works. According to the components around it, it does work. So hopefully there's no other issues with it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this off this board right now. So I chose my curve. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to show you guys what my curve looks like on the screen here in a little bit. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. First option we're going to do is we're going to remove it. I'm going to start the run, And you can see now it is, the top heater is dropping. And now what it's going to do is going to heat up the chip and lift it off the board. So let's come back once that is lifted off the board. All right, so as we can see, the Southbridge has been lifted from the motherboard. Top heater is now going to cool the chip. So I'm going to allow it to cool the Southbridge before I even lift that off of there, off the top heater right here. So the Southbridge is now right here. It is lifted off. And as soon as I touch it, it will automatically release. But I can still feel that it is still cooling off, so I'll give that a couple minutes to cool off. All right, guys, so now the Southbridge should be cool. I lifted it off. So there we go. There we have it. Southbridge is lifted off. And now I am going to put on the board that we're working on, and we're going to lift off the Southbridge off that. So let's go ahead and get that done. I'm going to take off this donor board off here, and we're going to put on the board and take off the Southbridge that we suspect is broken. All right, so we got the board put in place. I got the probe and everything on there. So we're going to allow the top heater to move down. I'm going to turn on some fume extraction. And we are going to allow this to do its curve. And it shows me the curve on the screen. So it's going to start giving me the graph once it starts heating up. But I'm going to allow this to be able to lift this. And as soon as it lifts this, I'll come right back with my Hakko solder iron. We're going to clean the old solder iron off the board. And we're going to work on reballing the Southbridge that we're going to put on there, and then getting that placed onto the board. So let's get straight to it. All right, I got some flux applied. I'm going to go in with some low melt solder, place it on the board, and then take it off of the desolder braid so we could just get going ahead and strip all these old solder balls off the motherboard. So let's get that done. All right, so I did the best of my ability to get all the old solder off. Now we're looking at the motherboard through our optical alignment on the BGA Reball machine, and let me allow it to focus in, and we can see that that motherboard is clean. All the solder is taken off. Everything looks good under there, so I'm going to close that out. And now we're going to go over, and I'm going to turn the cooling fans on just to make sure this is fully cooled off. And now we're going to go over to the repair bench and start work on the Southbridge. All right, so got it. Now we're going to place low melt solder on the chip. So I'm using my 559 Amtech Flux. I'm going to allow my Hakko solder iron to heat up. We're going to go in. We're going to swap this out with low melt solder. And we're going to come in with our desolder wick that you see right here, CP2515. We're going to get all this stuff taken up. So let's get started. Now we're going to take our desolder wick. We're going to move across the BGA chip with it in order to get all of this old solder lifted up. All right, so that's a clean and good looking chip. Now before we go into placing flux and preparing solder balls to be placed on there, we're going to want to align our stencil first. So obviously this is not the correct stencil, but the stencil will work. So let's try to get this aligned first. All right, so I have all the holes aligned correctly. You want to do that before you apply flux because you don't want to try aligning these things when you still got a bunch of flux to place, or you'll have a pretty big issue with moving a lot of the flux around. So that seems to be good now. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm also going to prepare the solder balls. We're going to use these solder balls right here. Right, you can see this is PMT solder balls, very, very high quality, good solder balls. I would never want to recommend anyone to use low quality solder balls unless you're going to be in a world of trouble trying to even get it applied on there. So now here's the part that we got to be very, very careful on, is applying this flux. We don't need a lot at all. So we're going to go around with our finger and just wipe it on the board. You just need a little bit. All right, so here we are right here. We got the flux applied, and now we are ready to add our solder balls. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just give it a little bit of a twirl before I drop it in there. Let me make sure 100% sure the alignment is good, because you don't want to mess up that alignment. All right, so now we're gonna shake these solder balls into place just like that. Let me clear the space a little bit because you can see on this camera up here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna shake these around. I'm gonna grab this by both sides like this, and I'm gonna shake it around, as you guys see on the camera right behind me. And we're going to let this flow back into the pit, through the pit. So dealing with this, you'll also deal with some solder balls that may get stuck, like how you see right there. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but there's a couple more solder balls than what we need in there. So I'm gonna kick them out because we don't need those in there, obviously. Okay, so as we can see, we have a solder ball in every hole, and I'm just getting deep in there to look around. Now, I love this BGA jig. This BGA jig, it's like $80, so it's pretty expensive, because you could get on eBay, get some of those jigs for $20, which is what I was using previously. But I like this jig because it's a lot more sturdy and you can press down on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly press down and release the chip to remove the solder balls. Now we're going to lift this up. We're going to slowly raise this back up, right? So now we have all the solder balls in place. We are missing one solder ball. One solder ball did not make it over because it is currently stuck in the hole. That is not a problem whatsoever. We can just place another solder ball on there, and I will do that. I will do that here shortly. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go underneath my microscope real quick. I'm going to remove some of the solder balls that we don't need, And because remember, that was a stencil that's kind of universal for these PlayStation Southbridges. So we don't need all these solder balls. And I'm going to make sure I put that one solder ball on there. So I'll be right back. Let me get that placed on there. And then once I get that placed on there, we're going to move over to my preheater. And as you can see, that's good. So, and I can point out what solder ball is missing. It's that solder ball right there. So not a problem. So let's go ahead and get this done. All right, so what I'm gonna do with this is, because I'm looking at this, I put that one solder ball into place. I'm thinking we might have enough spacing to be able to just throw this on a preheater to get this to be able to flow without having to remove some of the extra solder balls. So let's test that theory. I'll move over and show you guys what preheater we're going to be using. We're going to be using this preheater right here. I'm going to turn this on, and well, let me plug it up first. Then I can turn it on. So I got it turned on. I got it set at 265 degrees Celsius. I'm going to allow this time to heat up. So I went to go get my Teflon sheet. This is what I use to protect the BGA chip and to also help slide it off of the preheater once these solder balls have successfully melted. So I'm going to leave that right there. Once that heats up to 265 degrees Celsius, I'm going to place the BGA chip right on top of it. All right, so I set my chip right here just to prepare it. And now we're going to prepare, since it's still heating up. I am going to use what's known as a chip picker. It's right here. There we go. The focus on this thing is crazy. So this is what we're going to use. We're going to slide it underneath the chip. We're going to loosen up the slack on the grips off the BGA jig, and we're going to pop it over here, and then we're going to come in with, once it's heated up and all the solder is flowing, we're going to slide the Teflon sheet and hold the chip picker underneath and slide it back onto the chip picker, and then put it back on the BGA jig to cool. Also, I did move my fume extractor over. I have a fume extractor that I use for the BGA Reball machine in the preheater, so that will make sure we keep our lungs good while we go through this process. All right, so we got it placed on the preheater. I am waiting patiently for the solder to start flowing. And as soon as the solder starts flowing, we're going to have to maneuver it off of the board and move it back over to our BGA jig for it to cool off. And now it looks like the solder is starting to flow. I'm just going to leave it on here just a little bit longer, just to make sure they all flow into place. And it's starting to seem like all of the solder has flown safely into place. I'm going to shut the preheater off. And I'm going to continuously observe the chip. Now let's try to slide this thing off safely. All right. I want you guys to be able to see the chip. All right, so as you can see, the chip and the solder balls that didn't need to be flowed in place are just still obviously they liquefied and went back solid. So we'll be able to just pick those solder balls straight off of there. So that's not a big deal. So let's move this over to the microscope. Just gonna turn this straight around. All right, so all the solder balls are placed correctly on there. You can see on the screen, I'm moving back and forth across these solder balls, and they're not moving, meaning that they are flowed on there good. These solder balls look to be in good health. So now we're going to remove the solder balls that don't need to be in place. So let's move that camera back down over there. And how I'm going to do that quickly, so I'm just going to simply just clean the chip, and it's also going to brush off of the solder balls that we don't need on there at the same time. So I'm going to open this up. All right, sorry about that. So back under the microscope, I see the solder balls that are not supposed to be in place are now gone. I know this camera focus is terrible, but you can see literally all I did was just clean it just like that, and I wiped away the solder balls that we did not need on this VGA chip. So I'm just going to continuously clean that, make sure this chip is good. All right, look at that. That's a good looking chip. So good looking chip. We're drying it off. Just going to make sure there's no extra flux, there's no extra anything on the chip. All right, so look at that. That's a good looking chip. Chip is clean. I'll show you guys on the main camera. All right, so you can see that's a good looking chip. Now, chip better be good, because one thing you never want to do with these chips is take off a chip and it just so happens to be bad that you put it on the board. But I'm gonna knock on my repair bench that this chip is good. So now it's time to move back over to our reball machine. All right, guys, so this is actually the next day. Yesterday I made a critical error, a very new mistake, but it is what it is. I reballed the wrong type of Southbridge. I reballed a 42GG. I was supposed to reball a 46GG, like this one right here. Let me see if I can focus. Yeah, so this is what we needed right here. And the 46GGs have no missing solder balls on it, like how the 42GGs have it. So but it's fine. I ended up just reballing the 46GG off camera just to quickly get this done, but I did make a critical mistake. But I'm going to prepare and get some flux placed on the board before we get the chip placed on the board to get it ready to get mounted and aligned. All right, so I'm taking my 559 M-Tech flux. I'm going to put a tiny, small little bead in the middle. And even that is a little bit too much. You really want close to nothing on these boards when you apply these chips. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time going around with my finger and just spreading the flux along the motherboard. All right, so I put the chip right on the motherboard. So now we're going to start the optical alignment process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over to the screen. I already got my settings set to mount. I'm going to run that. It's going to come down, pick up the chip, and we're going to start the optical alignment. All right, optical alignment is complete. Now we're going to move forward. So what I'm going to do, So I'm going to go in here and click on alignment OK. And it's going to drop the chip down in place exactly where it needs to go. All right, so looks like the process is now complete. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow this a little bit of time to cool down, and I'll come right back. I'm going to allow the board to cool down to 100 degrees Celsius. Once it cools down to 100 degrees Celsius, and I'm going to come back in and kick on the cooling fans to make sure that this, you don't want to cool the board too quick, or you'll end up having issues with solder joints. So I'm going to allow this time to cool down at an appropriate temperature. All right, guys, so we got it back on the repair bench. I went on ahead and all I did was, while I was on the BGA Reball machine, I did clean around the area to the best of my ability with 99% IPA is in a toothbrush. Obviously using an ultrasonic cleaner will do a lot better, but I typically with a job with a BGA chip this small, I really wouldn't want to bust out something that big to do something like this, because then that's just doing more time consuming. So as you can see, I just go in, clean it up, wipe it down, and now we're good. And I'm gonna pop this CMOS battery back in here. But now it's time to get this thing back together, and let's see if we now can be able to get connectivity with the controller. I'm gonna get all these pads and everything put back on, and let's test it. All right, guys, so we got the console put back together, which honestly probably wasn't the best decision for me to make, because you always want to kind of partially put it back together to test it, but it is what it is. I'm pretty confident in my work. I'm going to switch over to HDMIs to where it needs to be. Okay, so PlayStation does power on. That means we at least got, I'm just going to kind of make sure the disc, it could at least take in the disc, just to make sure we didn't mess up anything else. And now I'm going to plug in the controller. All right, wow. And that connected pretty fast. So, and let me try disconnected it. Try to check the distance. All right, guys, so looks like we are 100% good on this one. Looks like we have a fully functioning PlayStation, and I'll show you guys right here, and you can see that we are getting everything like normal. Let me change the time, see it, make sure everything works. So yeah, everything is good, guys. So this was a successful Southbridge repair. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and turn this one off. So yeah, this one was a 100% successful repair. So this guy, if this video did help you guys out, or if you just enjoyed this video, please make sure you go ahead and leave a like on this video down below. Also, if you have any questions, leave it down in the comments, or you could just reach out to us and ask your questions, or if you need help getting your game console repaired, we could possibly repair it for you. But besides that, I'll hope to see you guys on the flip side, and I hope to see you guys on the next video. See ya.